G'day. In this video, I want to take some of the mystery out of the mystical experience. So people are very, very fascinated by things like jhanas and altered states, and they attach a lot of significance to these things. So there's a little experiment you can try that might put things into perspective. If you get a photograph, preferably a photograph of a person, and put it some distance away from you, and stare at it for a few minutes. Keep your attention on it. Just stare at that photograph. Now, what you've got to notice after some minutes is that your perception of that photograph will shift and change. You will start to read things into that image. The image might even become a bit animated. You might think that the expression of the person is expressing different feelings or emotions. The image, your perception of the image will change. Now, why this is a good experiment is it clarifies something. The picture, you know for certain, doesn't change. But you will notice that your perception of it does change the longer you stare at that picture. So that's a clear demonstration of how the mind perceives and doesn't perceive in a uniform manner. In the same way that you have different impressions of people each time you meet them. So what's going on there, especially when you're staring at something and applying a focus, is that there's a kind of fatigue sets in internally. The five senses, in this case your visual sense, is reporting accurately the same information. But the point is that the mind is processing that information. And it doesn't process it the same way each time. Your perceptions are built up and your comprehension of what you perceive is built up over a period of time with layers of different interpretations of the mind. Now, you then project onto what you perceive what the mind has created of those perceptions, your interpretation. And you'll see that quite visually if you try that experiment. Okay, so why am I dragging this into the conversation? People go in these long retreats and they practice meditation techniques which require them to focus their attention over lengthy periods. And for those people who engage in that and put a bit of serious effort into it, they get shifts in their perception. Now, that experiment only takes maybe 10, 15, sometimes half an hour to see what I'm talking about. When people spend hours a day and for days on end, or sometimes months on end, practicing these techniques, their internal perception undergoes quite a lot of radical changes, shifts from time to time. And it's a perfectly understandable process. And it doesn't mean anything. It's just the way the mind works. But in the context of, doing some serious spiritual work on a meditation retreat, in the context also of some tradition which has hundreds of years of history to it and developed philosophy, people attribute meaning, where it's arbitrary. Actually, it's completely arbitrary. Now, some of these mystical practices were the one-pointed techniques, and you know, what's very popular are things like Vipassana and mindfulness and all that sort of stuff. For people who engage in these things for very extended periods of time and very diligent, okay, they can experience a wide variety of different things. Now, these techniques are really a form of sensory deprivation that you engage in. And it's well known that sensory deprivation leads to a range of hallucinatory experiences. And there's nothing unusual about it. There's no meaning to it. It's just that the mind, your brain, has become fatigued. That's it. That's the mystical experience by and large. And a similar thing happens with some hallucinatory drugs. All you're doing is overloading your internal chemistry and distorting it, and you get a distorted experience, which you attach a meaning to. And that's where the problem is, attaching a meaning to these things. Now, there are, if you got this far in the video, there are some experiences by doing this that actually can be useful, because you can magnify certain aspects of your experience in a way which you wouldn't normally see. The most useful experiences have to do with when you experience exaggerated emotional states. You can discover anger, fear in a magnified form. And in those contexts, you have to deal with it. You've placed yourself in that situation. And if you can deal with it, then you've brought something from your subconscious to conscious awareness, and you know something about yourself which is actually useful. If you have been lashing out angrily at people, suddenly you can say, well, geez, it's actually me, it's not them. That's useful. A lot of people live their lives in fear unnecessarily. And if you see, oh, well, geez, I can be generating that fear quite irrationally. If you experience strong fear or sometimes terror, which can happen in a meditation retreat, and you experience it in a calm way, fear doesn't have the same effect on your decisions in normal day-to-day life. That can be useful. But some of the experiences that people strive for and they get because of these one-pointed techniques, all you're doing is experiencing the limits of your perception. You're taking your normal activity and you're distorting it, and you get a distorted experience. Very similar thing happens with sleep deprivation. If you go without sleep for 36 hours or 48 hours, at the back end of that, the last 36, 40 hours, if you're observant, you see that you're starting to hallucinate. You perceive things in a way which is not quite right. Now, that's fatigue, and it's normal if you distress yourself in that way. Now, a lot of these concentrated techniques we're engaged for lengthy periods of time, they produce these extreme results. And that's it. That's all it is. And whole religions have been created based on these experiences, assuming that they mean something other than what they are. Young children in the school playground, they discover, they spin themselves around and around, they get dizzy and they fall down laughing. Well, some of these meditation techniques are just an adult form of kids discovering the limits of their perceptual experience. Getting giddy is well understood. It's just the fluid in the inner ear, having been pushed to one side by the centrifugal force of spinning around. When you stop spinning, it takes a little while for it to readjust. Now, whole religions are based on all these so-called mystical experiences. And here's a few images of all the different religions that people dress up and assume a uniform according to which religion they believe in and going to adhere to. Really, all you're doing is joining a tribe. That's all it is. Except the danger is, as we see time and time again, religious conflict. People holding strong beliefs irrationally, coming into conflict with other people who hold other beliefs irrationally, and they fight over who's right. And most of it is based on interpreting experience in a magical thinking manner. Now, if you're still with me in the video, there are unusual experiences. There are times when we perceive things and we don't know how it's done, and it's a mystery. There are mysteries, and that's intriguing. But don't be drawn into crazy ideas based on distorting your perception. Whether it's done because you lock yourself up for hours on end, straining to do some weird meditation technique. You've come to some conclusion based on overdosing yourself with some chemical. We've got the five senses, and they're pretty accurate. They keep us alive. I haven't walked in front of a bus for a long time because I see it coming and I know it's real. And my intelligence goes to work and I stay on the footpath. There is a physical reality, and the five senses prove that. There's a mental perception of that reality, which is fluid, which needs constant examination and constant testing. And that's where intelligence comes in. You test your reality. You look for confirmation. So now, I know that I promised I was going to do more videos, and I don't particularly want to keep pumping videos out, but this is kind of important and it should be said. So, see you later.